All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming. A very warm welcome to everyone. Today's discussion on the future of Hungarian space research is the first in what may hopefully become a very long series of collaborations between Future Hungary and the Friends of Hungary Foundation. So before we start, let me thank Miklós Versegi, the leader of the Friends of Hungary Foundation, for letting this webinar happen. And furthermore, I would like to express my gratitude for the tireless work of Barbara Bálint, Alexandra Ruf, and Adam Halko from the Future Hungary Committee. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our speakers for today. So today, we are honored to have with us Dr. Orsia Ferenc, Ministerial Commissioner at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and Dr. András Schwind, University Professor at the Technical University of Budapest.
Yes, good evening.
So the plan for today is going to be as follows. We are going to have 40 minutes of a panel discussion, which is going to be followed by 20 minutes of Q&A. So everyone who is participating can submit their questions through the chat box below. You can submit your questions at any time during the discussion. If you feel like you have a question, just write to us, and we're going to read them out at the end of the discussion during the Q&A. So let's start. Establishing a common ground for a discussion, I believe it's one of its most crucial elements. So my first question would be, where is Hungary today in terms of space research? And what have been the most important milestones achieved by Hungary that define our involvement today? And what are the most important areas of involvement for Hungary today? So first, Orsia, if you would like to start.
Thank you very much for the question. This is really a relevant and good question. Hungary, first of all, has a more than 70 years long history in the space research and space activity, because this whole story started after the Second World War in 1946 with the second successful radar experiment toward the moon. This was the second on the world. The first was the United States. And after that, we were active in this sector, but in the intercosmos period, in a collaboration and cooperation with other countries, we were really successful. And this year, this is the 40th anniversary of our first astronauts mission. Bertalan Farkas, he had a successful mission to the space, and after this we joined to the European Space Agency as a full member state in 2015, and from that year we could increase our activity. But after this the election in 2018, the new government moved the whole sector to the responsibility of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. And in the last 2 years, a rapid and increasing activity could be experienced in this sector. As you see, we can talk about the competencies and capacities of the Hungarian space research and industry. But the basic question is always the money. And the most important is the role of the government in this sector. And in the last recent 2 years, the government decided to increase the financial budget and support of the sector. And they doubled the contribution to the ESA, to the European Space Agency's budget. And because of this, it became possible to open nearly all the so-called optional programs of the European Space Agency. And it is possible now to enter for the Hungarian actors, industrial and scientific actors to enter these optional programs of the European Space Agency. So, and the competencies and capabilities, Professor will say a lot of important details of this, but the engineering, the science, the life sciences, medical sciences, pharmacology, space chemistry, the development of onboard electronics, data transmission and data receiving systems, measurement systems, electromagnetic wave measurement systems, radiation shielding, radiation measurements. These are all topics in which Hungary really proved its knowledge, and we can, let's say, have a space heritage. That's the most important, to have a space heritage, because if we are a successful participant of a scientific mission and we can prove that our technology and our ideas are really applicable in the space in which environment the circumstances are very hard. So it's not similar to the Earth surface at all. In this case, we could prove that the Hungarian knowledge is valid in the space. And if we have this space heritage, we can enter the space market, where the profit is 1 to 6. So this is a really profitable sector of the world economy. So for the first, I would like to say this, and I would like to give the floor to Professor Schwind to talk about our knowledge in the engineering.
Yes, thank you. I'm sure that we are going to get back to many of the issues that you raised. So now, Professor, what do you think? Professor Schwind?
Yes, here I am. Yes.
What do you think about the first question? What do you think, where is Hungary today in terms of space research, and how would you describe our involvement?
Yes. Thank you for the question. Yes, but I should like to note that I am mainly oriented at the education side of the space research, taking part in this education of the space technology, which is my main profile. So from the other side, being old enough, I was able to follow the changing in the Hungarian space research background from the 65 years in the last century up till now. And I was working together with students from 1970, and it was an interesting challenge for the students to take part in the space research. Basically, when we started in 65, the only activity was connected mainly with space technology, mainly with students. Later, the situation changed. A new space research group was founded in 1970 at the Technical University of Budapest, called Space Research Group of the university, where we received money and we take part in an international cooperation called Intercosmos, which was the so-called peaceful usage of the space. And using this line, it was a good possibility to learn more on the space technology. Due to that, we got task from the Intercosmos line to realize some subsystems for different satellites. So we learned how to produce different subsystems. Mainly when we started, the main task was to take part in the realization of the power subsystem for the satellite. So finally, till 1980, we made a different subsystem on 16 different satellites. And of course, the main mission was like the Vega, which was really a big chance to step forward. So this was the situation till the social ambient changed Hungary in 1980 and end of 1980. And then it was a hole in the space, as we called it, when we were in standby to wait for the membership of the European Space Agency. So Intercosmos was destroyed, and we were with the hope to enter to the European Space Agency. But the process was very long, and I was in the present situation that we were practically pressurized by our students to do something new for the space, to force Hungary to enter into the European Space Agency as soon as possible. So this was the motivation, the main motivation, because with this idea, we started with the first Hungarian satellite to make something absolute new, which means new for the Hungarian as country, and which means some kind of qualification for the university. So this was the so-called limit where we decided to start. But of course, with a lot of difficulties, for example, how to collect the financial background, how to learn the technology and so on. So finally, it really spent 6 years to finish the first Hungarian satellite, which was finally a good success. And when we are not very optimistic, we can say that we pressurized the Hungarian government to enter the European Space Agency due to that it was so good feedback from the social ambient to really move on and be entered the European Space Agency. Of course, it is all belief. That is perhaps not a so-called official opinion. When we finished Masatvan, it was the open question how to proceed and how to continue our work. The big question was always how to find the financial background. So thinking on, it was the only way to move on a smaller, into the direction of smaller satellite. So this was the point when we decided to find a new smaller one, which is called so-called packet cube category, which is only a 5 centimeter cube, so which is a 1/8 only the original Masat size. So it was not a simple task to realize, not a simple challenge to realize such a small satellite. It was not enough to say that we are repeating the same kind of technological experiment what we made with Masatvan, but it was necessary to add on a new idea, a new experiment on board to move all the money from all sponsored packets. So this was the decision to find a new way, to find a new experiment to investigate the Earth's ambient, to do some kind of observation, looking down on the Earth to recognize the so-called electrosmog. So this was the next step. We moved on, and finally we realized 2 satellites. The first mission finished just 2 weeks ago, and we hope to continue with the second one in the next year.
Well,
so
thanks very much.
This is the line when we are doing. So the education, from my point of view, is a very critical point from the point of the Hungarian space research. How to give the necessary well-teached, well-educated manpower for the Hungarian space industry or Hungarian space ambient.
Thank you. I'm sure that your experience allowed you to have a very unique overview of Hungarian space involvement. And here I would like to ask all of our participants that if you would like to know more about the perspective of the professor or the perspective of the ministerial commissioner, you can submit questions, just use the chat box below, and you can ask any of our 2 guests.
Yeah.
So moving on, Orsia, you mentioned that Hungarian space involvement increased as a result of increased funding. So in particular, I know that after the Hungarian government's decision to support space research with 2.5 billion forints in 2019, a number of opportunities opened up. And the extent of these opportunities has increased so much that last year we managed to support ESA with about 11 million euros. And more recently, the scope of these opportunities increased yet again with the government's most recent decision to allocate an additional 1 billion for space activities, if I'm correct. So could you explain the nature of these opportunities and how these exactly changed our involvement in the European Space Agency?
Yeah, it is important to emphasize that this new 1 billion is not a new one. So the decision that the area needs a more budget and more reasonably using budget was decided at the beginning of this year, and in the frame of the economical plans removing the economy after the pandemic situation. The space industry was mentioned as one of the most important branch of the future industries. So it's important to emphasize that this is a vision of the government. It's a whole vision. It's not just 1 billion accidentally. And how the European Space Agency works. It works like board of stakeholders, let's say, the member states are stakeholders. And if we pay money into the budget, we can get it back and by a geo-return principle to the national space industry and space sector. We have a mandatory part of the whole contribution we pay to the European Space Agency, and we can pay into so-called optional programs. It means that these programs belong to different topics like navigation, telecommunication, protection of the Earth from influences of the space like asteroids, meteorites, or artificial problems or space weather problems, and so on. And if we open a door of an optional program, and we pay an amount of money to this program, our researchers and engineers and companies can take participation in these missions. And this is a great importance, because in this case, when we open the optionals, or nearly all the optionals except the launchers and I think the ground segment program, all the others are open now for Hungary. For example, the Technical University of Budapest and the engineers and students from the university can apply for the possibility to take a part of these missions. And this is really great. So what we see now is that Hungary is really a part of nearly all the important scientific missions of the European Space Agency, like for example, the JUICE mission toward the Jupiter, or the lunar programs. The moon is a very targeted task of the European Space Agency, and not just the European countries, but all the other countries on the world. And Hungary can be a part of these. So that's what we see now. The ratio of the geo-return is a key question. We have to increase this, but we just started this a few months ago, so it takes some time to get a level like Austria, which is really a successful example of the geo-return ratio, and we would like to pick up to that level, our geo-return ratio, but we are working on this continuously. More than a week ago, the European Space Agency organized a very successful event in Budapest. This was a space industry day, 2 days long event was, and I think 1,500 companies and participants, or nearly 200 participants interested, and were there partially personally, partially virtually because of the COVID, but it was really a successful event. So the European Space Agency was very satisfied. And these milestones, let's say, show that the direction is good, but we have to work more.
Thank you. I'm glad that the event went successfully. And I'm sure that if more questions are asked about what exact projects are we involved in, then the audience can ask more from Austria. But now let me turn to András. So Hungary reached a milestone in 2012 when the Mossad-1, the first Hungarian developed satellite, was sent into space. This proved that Hungarian researchers and engineers can reach important developments on their own, and not only as part of an international team. Another milestone was reached with the successful completion of the SMOC project, more recently, as you just mentioned. So first of all, could you tell us a bit more about these projects, because you were the leader of both Mossad-1 and the SMOC project? And second, do you think that there is a future for further domestic Hungarian space projects, or is Hungary better off joining international programs?
Yes, thank you. To answer, I think that the word what I like to use is the motivation. So in the field of education, the key word is the motivation. So when we are looking for the future of the Hungarian space activity, I think the key that whether we could reach the motivation for the young people in time, and later they will be ready to take part very actively in the Hungarian industry world. to reach this one, I think the best way what we learned to follow practically the American idea to realize the complete satellite in the time of the education. So the problem was before, as I mentioned, we made 16, we made subsystem for 16 or more satellites. So the motivation was not so strong due to that. When the student made something, a small subsystem, it was necessary to wait, let me so 5 years till this small system will go to the space. So to avoid this problem, this was the basic idea for Professor Twix in the States, to decide to build up small satellite to motivate the full process for the construction process of the young people, the students. So this is what we should like to do. We of course started with Mossad Fund, but meantime we learned to keep this so-called motivation level. We recognize that it needs a very high, in comparison from with other expensive, very high amount of money. So to realize that Mossad Fund type satellites, not only the Technical University of Budapest, but other universities also have difficulties how to collect this money. Only the launch fees around 80,000, around $100,000. So to go back, this is the way I think, and we are very happy to finally we realize two goals. The first one, to be able to introduce that it is a reality to do a smaller satellite, cheaper satellite, and this is working as perfectly as the larger one. It has the same subsystem system in the satellite. So for a student, it's a reality to finish the project in 2 years in the education. It means that after 2 years or in 2 years, it would be possible to see to launch the satellite and so the operation into time. So this is our goal now, to increase this from this point of view, the efficiency and the quality of the education using this small satellite. And of course, not only space technology, but due to that, inside the satellite always an empty space. So we should like to call the young people to give ideas what to do this empty place, what kind of experiment to install into it. So this would be the two lines to be able to realize, and the second one to call the experiments to put in. I think that this is the main goal for the future, and as I mentioned you before, this would be a great help for the Hungarian industry. The other open question whether the industry will be able to work with such a people, and let me say dealing with 50 men or so 50 students or something like. But I think that the quality of the quality of the education, I mean, it is high in higher level. So somebody is not able to find job in the field of the space communication. It would be possible to find nice jobs in another field because the background is excellent. What he learned.
Well, thank you. And maybe the participants can submit ideas, experimental ideas, what to put inside these satellites that András was talking about. Maybe we can come up with something interesting. So moving on to another topic. The private space industry is definitely disrupting international space activity because private corporations are often more cost-effective and independent than government-led institutions. So how's this trend of emerging private corporations affecting Hungary and Hungarian space research? And does any of you foresee Hungarian private companies entering the private space industry in the future? So the question is to both of you, but maybe Austria, you could go first.
Yeah, I believe, and I think not just it is not just my vision. I believe in the hybrid model of the financing of the space sector. At the beginning of the space age or space race, let's say, the full governmental financing was the more characteristic or more known. like the Apollo program and others. And now we see, for example, in the United States, that the private investors take a very important role in the developing of the sector, in the missions like the SpaceX Dragon Crew mission, which is very successful in a few months ago. And this is important to involve the private sector into the space sector, because this is a good part of the whole economic environment or ecosystem. But on the other hand, it is important to take into consideration that the governmental points of view and governmental aspects have to be involved into the whole picture, into the big picture. And because of this, some part of the financing tools must be left in the hand of the government or in the different nations, if the governments want to interrupt into the process of this sector and the future of the sector. In Hungary, we try to introduce this hybrid model. So on the one hand, the government increases the ESA budget, Hungarian contribution into the ESA budget, and the government has to open the door for the Hungarian companies. And in this case, the companies can enter the stage of this world. But for example, the Carpathiasat, this is a new company in which you can see that the hybrid model started to rise up on the horizon, let's say, that the government or the state and private investors also take participation in this new company. And this is really welcome, because it's important to see that we need the not just the money, but the innovation, the vision, the idea of the private investors as well. So we hope that this will be successful as this is in the United States. And we hope that the Hungarian big companies and private investors will be more interested in the investment to the space.
András, what is your take on the issue?
Yes, yes. As I've told you before, that I am very involved in the education field, that I am happy to inform you that finally, at the end of last year, we sent up 2 satellites. The first one was SpACE-1, which was a so-called university-oriented, realized in the university ambient. But the other one, which was the so-called ATL-1, ATL-1 was a completely private satellite. What is the reason for this satellite? The reason was very simple. The company came with the idea they developed a special thermal isolation material, and they want to test it in the space. So the question was whether we can produce such a small satellite to investigate for small money in short time the behavior of the thermal material in the space. Finally, it was located inside, went up after 10 months. We received a lot of data, and the company is very happy because he has the so-called space qualified thermal isolation material. So it was only a good question, but perhaps also I didn't mention that the other very important fact, which is somewhat is repeated sometimes, to overcome the administration. So we learned what is the difference between the university administration or a private company administration. So difference is very high. So the private side was much faster, fast decision making, and so on. So in my point of view, I think one reason why the private space research is coming, and one reason is the problem with the so-called official administration. So in the case of private side, it is much simpler and faster. So we learned this during these missions.
Thank you. I would love to ask you more about this issue, but I think we should move on to the next topic. And if the people want to learn more about this, then again, please ask your questions in the chat box. So my penultimate question to both of you would be about COVID. It's a very timely issue. So how does COVID-19 affect the space industry, and what obstacles or opportunities is it producing both nationally and internationally? So I'm interested in both of your perspectives. Maybe Oshia, you could start.
It is interesting that the space sector and the space industry is a crisis-resistant sector. It means that if you see that the other parts of the economy, like the tourism or other parts, are quite sensitive and a little bit blocked in this hard situation, the space sector moves forward quite effectively. Why? Because this sector gives the basis of the service, of the global service of the telecommunication, all the services which makes the world, the globe, as a global village. And if you see that in this pandemic situation, the homework form of the jobs and this telecommunication, like what we do right now, we use the internet and this telecommunication network to meet each other, because the COVID situation is really hard now in Hungary, and it's not easy to organize a big event or a big meeting. And because of this, the technological background of these techniques and services is based on this, partially based on the space and the space satellite networks and big infrastructures. And because of this, the space sector has a very nice, or let's say nice, or very good vision in the future. So we will have an increasing ratio in the global economy, so I don't worry at all. And as I think Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and the others also don't worry too much if they think about the future of this sector.
András, do you share the enthusiasm? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
This is a promising future, I think, so we have to believe that this will not change.
Well, thank you. That's a very optimistic outlook. András, do you share this optimism?
Yes, of course. We do not want to stay alone. I mean, we are looking for international cooperation, especially in the field of the universities, to keep contact and to improve the education background using this kind of connections. So due to that, from this point of view, Europe is an open market for the students. So we must take care to give a so-called very well marketable education for them. So we are open, and step by step we are building up connections with different universities to work together to improve our education. So it is our dream and plan for the future.
Thank you very much. So I only have one more question to both of you, and this would be your outlook towards the future. So what are you most excited about when it comes to the near future and the future prospects of the space industry and of Hungary's involvement? So for this final question, maybe András, you could start.
Yes, it is difficult to do any kind of prediction from my point of view. As you mentioned, now we have so many common problems in the space that my dream is to solve this problem, as well the problem with the space debris and so on. So these are open for international cooperation, or to reach the Mars and Moon and so on. So we must know these goals, and we must fulfill the education requirement for these goals. So this is why I should like to know more on the motion of these areas to help to increase the quality of our education.
From the governmental perspective, governmental point of view, we can say that we see the international trends. This is, as András mentioned, the moon, the deep space missions, new services like the space debris problems, which should be handled by some service like development. And we would like to increase Hungary's activity in this. We would like to send the second scientific astronaut to the space soon, in this decade, in these few next years. And the Carpathians thought, I hope that this will be a very successful story, and Hungary will have an own telecommunication satellite, which will be a huge jump for the whole Hungarian sector and the Hungarian companies as well. So that's our vision, and we work for this. So this is not just a vision, this is a plan.
Thank you. I'm also very interested in this news that Hungary is planning to send another person into space soon. So now let me move on to the Q&A. We have a number of questions from our attendees, and let me say that the first question on the list is very close to my heart because as the leader of Future Hungary, I believe that the issue of brain drain is a very important topic to tackle. So the first question from an anonymous attendee is, how does the phenomenon generally described as brain drain impact Hungarian space research? So whichever of you want to go first.
It's hard. This is a hard question, but not just for Hungary. This is a hard question for all the countries which are not so strong, let's say, in economically like a bigger one. So this brain drain is always a problem. But if we can stabilize somehow the universities, as András told, and if we can offer a really good education in the high schools and at the universities, and after that we can offer a good career in the Hungarian private sector, space industrial companies and so on, the brain drain can be a bit slower, I think. This is always an open question, and not just in this technological sector, but in other sectors as well, like the problem of the medical brain drain, let's say. So we must take into consideration that this is a real problem. But if the young people can get a real career here in Hungary, I believe that they can use their knowledge here in this country, because this is their home, finally.
Professor, what do you think?
Yes, it is what you mentioned before, that how to cover these expenses. This always this is the question in a small country, and as also mentioned before, I think that in the future the private sector will increase, and it is coming with more money. This is my dream. So I hope so that it will act some kind of effect on the education too. And as looking back on S3, the fourth was the private satellite, I can tell you that practically the private money was the dominant. So if we can keep this tendency and increasing the budget this way, it would be a very big help for the Hungarian space industry too. So this is my dream. But meantime, I should like to know that I should like to thank for Orsolya that she really feeds us now with the new satellite. So it means that he has some money in her budget.
Well, thank you. And Professor, what do you think about this trend of people going abroad to get education? So the phenomenon of brain drain, people leaving Hungary, going abroad to learn about space research.
This is not a problem. This is not a problem if they go to another country and to get some experience. It's good because they can enlarge their focus. They can get a lot of new knowledge and new techniques and innovative ideas. The problem is if they don't want to return to Hungary because they don't see any real possibility to to have a good career here in Hungary. So what we have to do is building a bridge back to Hungary from other countries for these young people.
Well, I wholeheartedly agree, and I very much hope that future Hungary is doing just that. So moving on to the next question, Zsuzsanna Bodo is asking, how do you see the Hungarian startup ecosystem in the space sector, and how do you activate it?
Yes, András?
It is for you.
Any of you?
Yep. Just a minute, because I tried to find this in the chat room. So could you repeat the question, because
yes,
simultaneously I read.
yeah, of course. It was asked at 6:38 by Zsuzsanna Bodo.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see the Hungarian startup ecosystem in the space sector? And
yeah,
how
it's
do you activate it?
It's a good question. The startup is a special. The startup ecosystem is a special one in the space sector, because in the space sector, as we mentioned earlier, the space heritage is basically fundamentally important. So it's not so easy to be a startup in this sector. First, you have to prove something, and what is the startup? For example, András, the students in his group, they are all startuppers, let's say, because they really proved a new technology in their topic, these CubeSats, these pocket cubes, and this is not similar to another part of the economic startup models. But we have a business incubation center of the European Space Agency here in Hungary. Now this was in the Wigner Institute, and now we move it to another startup incubation ecosystem to increase the efficiency of this model. So this is always a question of the spin-in, spin-off problems. A lot of startups try to use spin-off technology. It means that some space technology implementation to other parts of technological sector. The spin-in startupping is a harder problem, I think. So the spin-off startups are more applicable than the spin-in. This is my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I think.
Well, thank you. Let's move on now to, oh, excuse me, Professor.
Yeah, I should like to add on that idea and what I lost in before, that finishing Mossad 1 and now finishing the first section of the satellites, two small companies was founded. So when we are discussing on the future of the student, it's a good illustration. After Mossad 1, the company sold C3S was founded, and now finishing the SMOG 1, the 27Gs, the name of the company was founded and started. So it is a good sign that not simply feed the Hungarian industry with good manpower, but open new industry in the background.
Thank you. We do have a lot of questions, so how about from now on, let's try that one of you answers one question, and that way we can just answer more questions. And well, of course, any one of you can volunteer for them. So the next question would be, how successful is Hungary in science diplomacy compared to other ESA countries, connecting researchers, universities, and students? And how would Hungary improve? Do you have any numbers? That's the question.
I think we could increase the efficiency of the space diplomacy very rapidly in the last 2 years. Just in the last year, just in this year, we signed 7 bilateral MOUs with not just with space agencies and countries, but private company as well, the Virgin Galactic. So we signed with Brazil, with Turkey, with Portugal, with CNES, the French space agency, France, Israel, and Singapore, and some others are in preparation phase. And this means that we really try to build a global network of bilateral cooperation next to the European Space Agency activity. It means that we have not just one pillar of our activity, but we try to be we try to think in a wider scale. And if we compare it to other countries, I think this is a good model. So other countries, the other countries in the region, the Czech Republic, Poland, or Austria, or others, they do the same. They build bilateral connections. And that's why the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade is very professional in this, because the whole global network of the embassies can support this activity all around the world. And it means that the ambassadors can help this process very effectively. And we use the space diplomacy really. And what you see, and I think everybody can see that the space is really in the focus now, and not just the peaceful use of the outer space, but the diplomatic questions are open and are on the table now. The regulation is an open question, just like the moon, the usage of the moon and the resources of the space. A lot of open questions from the side of the law. And the human activity in its all complexity appear in the space as well as on the Earth surface. And it means that we really need the talent of the diplomatic corps, and the Hungarian diplomats are really professional in this. So I hope that that you can see that the result of this is really effective.
Thank you. Professor, I believe the next question is your expertise. So Peter Gall is asking, is there any opportunity for a vehicle mechanical engineer to participate in a project in Hungary, in a space project?
Yes, of course. We were in cooperation with our mechanical engineer department during our work. So it was a really close cooperation. We had around 6 or 7 students from the mechanical engineering department taking part in the project. One of the main tasks for the design, the thermal behavior of a very small satellite, because it is a very big challenge. It was a big challenge for the mechanical engineers too. And it would be of interest that the structure of the satellite were made by 4 young mechanical engineer ladies. So ladies, correctly, young ladies, designed the structure of the satellite, coming from the mechanical engineer department. Of course, the dominant is the so-called our side, the telecommunication side. But we are very happy to invite and to integrate into our activity the mechanical engineers or the young or students from the mechanical departments.
Thank you. The next question is a very interesting one. So will the SpACE program be introduced in the high school curriculum in any ways? Or will there be special project weeks connected with it?
It will not be introduced as just one curriculum or one subject, let's say space research. We have a lot of interesting subjects: physics, mathematics, the STEM, the biology, and the protection of the environment. So, but we would like to introduce within the frame of these curriculum and subjects. We started a program in accordance with the Ministry of Innovation and Technology to reform a bit the high-level education at the universities, because this is a multidisciplinary topic, the space activity, from the economy to the engineering, from the space science and physics and mathematics to the law and to the economy. And we would like to cooperate between the universities. And the other is the high schools. We joined the ESRO program of the European Space Agency, which could be a good starting point for this high school education. The European Space Agency developed this ESERO program, especially for the high schools and high school teachers. And we would like to open the door as early in an early phase for the students, and to orient them toward the space in an early stage, let's say at the end of the elementary school and in the high school years. For example, in this year, we start to organize a competition, especially for high school students and their teachers. And the first team can visit the ESA Scientific Center in Nordwijk. And I hope that this will be really a good grant of this competition. And the competition will focus on the complex problems, for example, building a village on the moon or something like this. So this is not a typical physics or mathematics problem or typical high school competition, but a bit more complex.
Professor, do you think that learning about space should also be included in the high school curriculum, or children should be made aware of this earlier?
Yes, but I should like to come back a little what Orsia mentioned before, that thinking on the motivation, being able to compare the motivation and interest of the young people in comparison back with 40 years or something like, it is lower. So it is difficult to motivate the young people to move into the direction of the space research, space technology, and into the space. It's very interesting because our ground station was opened in the time of the operation of our satellites. So we called young people with teachers to come and to see how the satellite is working. I mean, to introduce the reception of the telemetry data and so on. Then it would be of interest to see that the most interesting young people was in the age of around 10 to 12 years. So this is a very critical time range when we can catch the young people. And I was happy asking the young people leaving the stations that who want to be a space-oriented engineer. And 12 was the limit. We can carry 12 students at the same time. 10 told they want to be a space engineer. So it's very interesting. It is not said later. If you are inviting the middle school people or the high school people, it is quite different. It's extremely difficult to motivate them. So this is the reason why we must find ways how to affect, how to motivate, how to keep the motivation of these young people in the middle school and high school here. So this was all it's very interesting to see.
Thank you for both of your perspectives. The next question will go to you, Orsia, from Adam Halko. The Hungarian government has recently signed a strategic cooperation agreement with the Singaporean Office for Space Technology. This was a huge milestone in the Hungarian space research. Do you think, Dr. Orsia Ferenc, that we Hungarians will also cooperate with South Korea, the biggest investor in Hungary, in the same field in the future? What other countries might be interesting in the area of space research and development?
This is a good question. We work on this. So the South Korean partners and we started a communication and a conversation on this. And this is absolutely a realistic goal to sign an MOU with South Korea. And some other countries are also in the focus, like South Africa, which is interesting that they have a real space activity and they are interested in the Hungarian activities. And for example, Italy is very active in this signing with MOU with us, and we are also in negotiation with them, the Italian partners. So absolutely, this process is going on with signing MOUs, bilateral MOUs. We really believe in this and this communication with partners. And on the other hand, simultaneously with increasing the activity in the space agency, in European Space Agency, and in this bilateral network, I think this is an optimal and very promising step forward. So absolutely, South Korea is really a good partner, and Singapore is also another one, which is a very dominant actor in the space sector in the Asian part of the world. So I hope that we can really use this very effectively.
Thank you. We have another question about the economy and about the economic impact of space research from Thomas van der Heyen. Finding investment for space programs is often divided into two areas: research for investment for research or teaching purposes, and research focused on specific requirements. Has the government considered carrying out studies to evaluate and quantify what space technologies would contribute to the economy of Hungary?
If I understood well, as I saw from the chat window, I saw another question, so, which regards to the foreigners' participation in the space economy. So it's different from the question you have read. But yeah, absolutely, the private investors from all of the world are invited to the Hungarian space life or space activity, and we started to work out a model of this investment by the aid of the bank sector, and we hope that we can announce more details in the near future on this. And in this case, all the private investors are welcome to take participation in the development of this new Hungarian space economy and space ecosystem. And the question had another part, just I forgot it. Could you remind me?
It was just about the, let me find it. So about how has the government considered carrying out studies to evaluate and quantify what space technologies would contribute to the economy of Hungary? That was the question.
We have a space, let's say, kaleidoscope or catalog of the important companies and activities of the Hungarian space sector, which is on the internet, so it can be available for all of the people interested in this. So we also have this catalog.
Well, thank you. Unfortunately, as we are already running late, I will only have time to ask one more question. Then this one is going to go to both of you. So the final question is going to be, in what areas is our contribution to the project most likely to be groundbreaking? I think the question is referring to existing European Space Agency or research projects. So what is our main strength and which project can utilize it?
András?
No, it is not clear. Please repeat once more the question.
Yes, of course. So in what areas is our contribution to the projects most likely to be groundbreaking? What is our main strength and which project can utilize it?
For us, I mean, yes. Yes, the question was, which area is open for the future, or what was the basic question? It's not clear.
That is the most effective, I think. So I think the most effective,
so if I understand it correctly, then
I don't hear everything here. So the problem is that I
have some problem with the sound, so this is the right reason. So
I try to pick up some words, but if I understood well the question, I think that the strength of the Hungarian space industry is the onboard electronics, and the Technical University of Budapest is really a very good home of this knowledge. And the other is the space chemistry and the radiation, the measurement systems of the radiation and the radiation shielding. And in the telecommunication, the onboard electronics and antennas, in which we are also very, very good or strong. We have companies which are very active and internationally a part of the global space industry and market. And the material sciences, we have another company at Miskolc, which is a supplier of the platform elements of the Sentinel satellite fleet. This is the Copernicus program of the EU, and these are really good flagships, let's say, of the Hungarian space industry, if I understood the question well, because I didn't hear
Yes.
all the sentences, just some bits of words.
Yes, that was the question.
Yes, the problem, we have some problem with my sound, so
Yeah,
the words are breaking, so it's extremely difficult to follow the question. This is true.
Yeah, sorry, it was a technical difficulty.
Yeah.
So the question was about the strength, the main strength of Hungary in terms of space research. So what are we most focused on and what are we the best at? That was the question. So Professor, what are your thoughts?
No, I am not able to follow the question. This is my basic problem as before. So the sound is very bad. So
okay.
I'm able to understand you. This is a very, very basic problem. I don't know the reason, but it's extremely difficult to follow you.
Okay, well, I hope the sound is better now. I very much hope that everyone can hear me. Okay, in which case there is one more question maybe that we have time for, and then we should throw this to the concluding remarks. So Douglas Watson is asking, the Germans have their Fraunhofer Institute, UK has satellite applications catapult. Do you think there is a need for a central organization that supports Hungarian SMEs to get access? Okay, all right.
Absolutely. The space agency, National Space Agency, is the future. We know this very well. So we started to build up this structure. And the first step was to strengthen the governmental side within the ministry. But we see very well that the concentrated space agency is important. And we would like to collect all the capacities and capabilities into the umbrella of a new system or new institute, which could be a space agent, National Space Agency. So we see this very well, just it takes time to step forward, but we are working on this also.
Well, I am glad to hear that. Thank you. Do you have some closing remarks as we are approaching the end of this conversation? So if I could ask both of you to just collect some thoughts that you would like to leave with our audience. So any closing remarks, Professor?
Oh, yes, I should like to thank the discussion, and I hope to meet a lot of very, very clever people, young people at university courses in the future, most of them motivated with space. So this is my dream.
I would like to say that the history of the mankind in this century will be written in the space. Our future depends on the space. So I would like to encourage everyone to join the space ecosystem, not just the engineers and scientists, but everyone who has any interest toward this sector, because the space will be one of the most important topic of this century.
Thank you very much. Thank you both of you. So on behalf of Future Hungary, I would like to thank Dr. Ferenc Orsia and Dr. Schwind András for joining us. And I would like to thank the Friends of Hungary Foundation for making this event happen.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for the audience too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye.